Muchachos y muchachas, The Secrets of Playboy, Season 1, Episode 3. I told you guys that I would be keeping up with this series, and yeah, it's definitely something you'll want to start if you haven't started it already. This is showing on A&E, and what it basically entails are, past Playboy bunnies and employees of a Playboy enterprise, whether it be the mansion or the Playboy Club, in which we're going to talk about today. And, it gets darker and darker, it seems, every single episode. Now, in this episode titled The Bunnies and the Cleanup Crew, it overviews really the start of the elite enterprise within the Playboy realm, universe, whatever you want to call it. And it sort of goes through the origins of the sexual assault, the cover-ups, and it's quite gross and harrowing. Stay right there. We're going to go through it. The fear of wrinkles sometimes stunt my self-confidence. I tried anti-aging serums, natural health supplements, and everything in between. Nothing seemed to work, and I was starting to lose hope. But that's when I was recommended this amazing new face serum that my life has never been the same since. My results with Age Glow have been nothing short of miraculous. Within no time, this product helped reduce the appearance of fine lines, returned my skin's elasticity, and gave my skin a more youthful glow. My skin is much more vibrant now and is tighter, firmer, and smoother than I've ever seen it in years. I highly recommend Glow with Natalie. Get it today for up to 38% off for a limited time by going to glowwithnatalie.com or by clicking the link below. All right, so Season 1, Episode 3 of The Secrets of Playboy. This particular episode is titled The Bunnies and the Cleanup Crew. And as harrowing as those few words are, it really does entail the entire episode. So before I jump into some details, I do want to mention that I do go through the episode in high-level key points. And these are topics presented in the episode. So if you consider that as a spoiler, you'll probably want to go watch the episode first. But, just so you know, I don't give very intricate details of the episode. So I leave that up to the production. I definitely think it's worth watching. So I just thought that I'd mention that before I jump into the details. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So at the beginning of this episode, it really fleshes out the few characters that were original Playboy Bunny Club workers. I don't know if that's the correct title, but they were workers or Playboy bunnies at the Playboy Bunny Club. And it fleshes out a little bit of their history, what was going on in their personal lives before they got gravitated towards this industry. And you gain a little bit of insight as to who these women were. And, it progresses into the start of the Playboy Bunny Club. In the previous episodes, we learned about the start of Playboy Bunny magazine. And this time it's, moving into the more brick and mortar setting of a club. And with that being said, that means that there are more live settings. It's not just the Playboy mansion. It's different settings within different clubs in different cities. And they explain different groundwork rules for the clientele, things, for example, like you can't touch the bunnies. And, I see from observation, these episodes, they kind of start off with like the good news first, meaning that they kind of paint what it was perceived at the beginning, if that makes any sense, by these characters. And so, it seemed to be like a cool setting and, very safe environment, that, Hef was protecting the girls. But then it starts pivoting very gradually into the darker details. For instance, it does give detail as to how the Playboy bunnies were expected to work and even the expectations that were set over them. For example, there were club rules and trainings. Like, for instance, they had to memorize drinks, and it was like a boot camp. If you didn't memorize the drinks, you basically suffered some sort of consequences, not physical, but, you would suffer the consequences of the job. There were other things like, moves like the bunny dip that they had to, I guess, posture whenever they served drinks. There were inspections of the girls. So you can see how it kind of sounds like it's getting incrementally worse, right? So there were inspections of the girls. They had to have the right image, weight checks, things like this. And from this also came the costumes. They had to wear the corset and the heels. And, they went through very briefly some injuries that the Playboy bunnies had to endure throughout this job. Now, as I stated, it did get into more darker pivoting in this point of the episode. And they go through a very graphic story by one of the bunnies in which, like I stated before, have already set ground rules for the clientele. And so, the clientele already had this notion that they couldn't touch the girls. So it got a little bit darker once they stepped outside of the club, in their normal day, lives or experiences. And it does go into one of the woman's stories, and it gets really, really dark. And with that being said, it goes into a lot of detail of sexual assault on the behalf of these Playboy, what they call the members key holders. And so these key holders felt, I guess, provoked or entitled to a Playboy bunny after being, I guess, I don't know how to best articulate it, but they were there at the club. They saw the Playboy bunny. They would invite the bunny outside the club, and you would imagine. So this was, for example, one of the stories at the beginning. Now, it does go into detail how, it seemed like this one story was protected. It seemed like this person had a good not that it was a good experience, but in the respect of Playboy and its people protecting this person, it seemed to be that it went that way. But that wasn't the story for the rest of this episode. So they then describe a lot more that was happening as, the Playboy Bunny Club started to establish itself a little bit more. They started getting in pretty elite customers, celebrities, and they listed a lot of celebrities that would, frequent the club. And, moving on from there, there were rules more loosely that were applied to the celebrities and the premium member clubs, because there were tiers. There were tiers to the clubs. There was, you had the gold, the silver, the bronze or whatever, they would have different tiers for different club members. So for the more premium and elite members, there seemed to be looser rules. And with that being said, they move into this story of, I believe there was like a resort setting of the club, or maybe they had like a subset of the club at a resort. And, there was a very, very dark story there. And it also moves into some really, really dark episode of a celebrity that took two bunnies from the club to their mansion and basically brutalized them. And I'm telling you, this detail is nothing compared to the episode, because the episode goes into detail and it is brutal. But then this moves into, the suspected cover-ups of Playboy, the start of the protection. And that's where it alludes to the cleanup crew. These Playboy bunnies were starting to get assaulted. They were starting to get brutalized. And, it was never, it was always, don't go to the police, don't go to the hospital, even in these more severe cases. they had their own crew to basically damage control each specialized event or incident that would happen. And some of these incidents were really, really bad. So, you know, again, like this is an entire hour-long episode. And, you know, basically watching this, it's just very realizing how much it is so glamorized at the facade, right? You would look at this, you know, especially with Girls Next Door. That's how a lot of us were introduced, at least for, you know, young people like me, the millennials or, you know, whatever, who were there to see it. You know, that's how I knew a lot more about the insights of that culture, was through that reality show. And, you know, you see it, especially if you watched it originally on the E! channel. You watch it and just thought like, wow, it's glamorous. They have parties all the time. They have celebrities around them all the time. They have, you know, all this, you know, money and clothes and purses and accessories. You know, it's very glamorized at the facade. But when you learn about this industry and the cover-ups, then you really start to educate yourselves as to what really could be going on underground in many other industries that look glamorous, you know. And that's one thing that gave me a lot of insight reflecting back on this, and especially, you know, within the 60s, a major setting of this episode, within the 60s, how much more easier it was for them to get away with a lot more things, because, you know, it was a lot more analog. We have to consider that was a lot more analog. There weren't a lot of whistleblowers, or there wasn't a lot of mobilization of information. It was very hush hush. And so they got away with it a lot easier. And they even go into some of the crew that were part of the cleanup crew. They do testify in this episode, and they go into, you know, the detail as to why they had to keep it a secret. Now, I wanted to mention this as well, because this story came up today, and I have to mention this in this episode, because this is a portion spinoff of what I explained. So I'm going to re-explain that so that way you have this understanding before I go into this. But I mentioned in the last part how there was a celebrity took two very young Playboy bunnies back to his mansion. And the celebrity then brutalized these two, and they never were able to go to the police or the hospital, and they were brutalized, you know, without giving you the detail of this episode. And it so stands that this celebrity was able to get away with it. There were no charges. There was no repercussions, nothing for this celebrity. The reason why I wanted to mention this is because this exclusive article came out today on Daily Mail, and it details this setting, but in a wider scale. So it says, there was a rape on a regular basis, how Hugh Hefner's friends ran their own Playboy mini mansions with reject playmates, promised fake modeling contracts before they were traded like cattle to rich and powerful men. So, you know, again, this was part of the episode. This was one scenario part of the episode. But this article paired up with me watching this episode really illustrates a bigger iceberg. Okay, like this was like not even the tip of the iceberg. This was like, you know, just the pinpoint, the very tip top of the iceberg. This starts to paint the apex of the iceberg. So let's go through this article here. I do have some high points of this. You know, I won't go through every single detail, but there's definitely a lot of detail within here. So it starts off, teenage girls as young as 16 were trafficked, drugged, beaten, groomed for prostitution, and raped in mini mansions owned by Hugh Hefner's friends and frequented by celebrities, a former president, and state governor. Playboy insiders claim interviews with Daily Mail. Now, this is an exclusive that published today. Witnesses said that wannabe playmates who didn't pass auditions at the Playboy mansion would be housed at a network of Beverly Hills homes where they were fed false promises of modeling contracts and movie roles and were traded like cattle between rich and powerful men. So let me just explain this part really quick, because I think this part is very easily skimmed over for any reader of this type of article. So breaking this down, these were Playboy rejects, right? So they didn't make the auditions, they didn't make the any setting within, you know, whatever industry they were trying out for, whether it be the magazine or the Playboy Bunny Club. And so there was a vulnerability, right? There was a vulnerability that these elite people were preying on within the minds of these young women. And so they knew that there was a want there. There was a yearning to get in the industry. There was a yearning to, you know, be glamorized as all these other models were glamorized, right? And so they utilized that vulnerability to prey on them and to, you know, leverage their wealth and their power and their apparitions to then tend to them as cattle. So then what you can foresee what will happen next is that they probably said, you know, you're going to, you know, oh, you didn't make it here. Don't worry. I have connections within, you know, this modeling agency or, you know, with this band or this producer in Hollywood. Don't worry. I'll get for you, you know, but you got to do a favor for me. And if you don't do it, then there's no deal. So you can only imagine, you know, I said it in just a few words and not to minimalize that, but that's basically how this would happen, this scheme would happen. So Jennifer 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner grew up around the glamorous Playboy mansion of the 90s and the 2000s, As the daughter of Dr. Mark 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner, Hefner's close friend and personal physician dubbed Mr. Feelgood over his reported proclivity for prescribing Quaalude pills, she says she was exposed to the secret dark side of the Playboy enterprise from a young age. Now, this woman, Jennifer 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner, was actually in the first episode, season 1, episode 1. And her story really, really onsets, you know, just the darkness of this theme within the series. She grew up basically in the Playboy mansion, and as you guys have probably seen yourself, if you've watched this for yourself, she goes into this progression of her experience, how glamorous it was, and how she aspired to a lot of these women to where it just got into a very dark area of her life. So that's who she is, Jennifer 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner. Her father, again, one of the doctors, I believe there were multiple doctors, if I'm not mistaken, but one of the doctors who prescribed the Quaaludes for the use of Hugh Hefner. Continued on. An exclusive interview with DailyMail.com, she described debauched parties at some of the mini mansions with young women encouraged to inject hard drugs or dosed with date rape drugs without their knowledge before multiple men had sex with them. 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner, 51, claimed that the women were pimped out by the mansion owners who received cash favors and influence from clients, including celebrities and top politicians. And you definitely get this sense of a theme with this third episode. There are some details in there that you get the sense of the eliteness of the tier. We're going to call I think the most elite tier of the Playboy Bunny Club, the key holders, as they called it, was the gold tier. So if you were a gold tier, you were a celebrity, you were a high-level roller, you basically serviced them however they wanted, they got whatever they wanted, whatever drink they wanted, whatever, you know? And you kind of get this theme there. So I'll let you guys watch that episode and kind of excavate those themes yourself. But here, 𝘠𝘠𝑗rner, who was the little girl who grew up in the Playboy mansion, claimed that women were pimped out by the mansion owners who received cash favors and influence from clients, including celebrities and politicians. So again, this is not Hefner himself. These were his friends. So Hefner had the Playboy mansion. This was like the most aspirational, you know, party setting, I guess you would say, or industry enterprise. And then his friends basically did a copycat mansion. They had their own mansions, and they would plant their own sort of parties and, you know, their own sort of honey traps, I guess we can call them, for vulnerable young women. She said that women would often be blackmailed by men at some of the mansions who threatened to tell their families they had become prostitutes and have them blacklisted from modeling careers if they did not agree to have sex. This little portion right here that I just read out is also something within this third episode that you guys want to detect. This became a theme that got multiplicative, I guess. It became multiplicative within different friend settings within their own respective homes, I guess, or respective mansions, I guess we can call it. So these women would get blackmailed. You know, there's the trap. You guys saw the trap from the beginning, the fly trap. Oh, you vulnerability. Oh, you didn't make it in the Playboy, you know, industry or whatever it was. The audition, the whatever it is that they didn't make, they would prey on that, get them lured in with the money, the wealth, the apparitions, you know, the flashiness and all that. Once they were in, they would then blackmail them, record them, pictures, things like that. And that's what they held over their heads. And now they couldn't leave the industry. And now they had to do whatever that these men wanted them to do. So with that being said, I spent most of my life at the Playboy Mansion. Holidays after school, weekends that turned into decades, 𝘱𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘪 told DailyMail.com. My father was Hefner's closest consistent friend of 40 or more years and his live-in physician, which was her father. Men from Hef's inner circle ran fake modeling agencies and housed young women who had hopes of becoming rich and famous. These men were trying to replicate Hef's Playboy Mansion by creating their own mini mansion. Though these men were in Hef's inner circle, Hef would distance himself from these mini mansions. He rarely attended these parties. These men were very wealthy and connected in the entertainment, politics, sports industry. They hosted massive parties under the guise of fake modeling agencies hosted by sponsors, so they seemed legit. The young girls who were part of the mini mansions did not realize that they were being groomed to become high-class escorts. Many became addicted to drugs, threatened, and blackmailed. And these were just different components of the ensorcel, I guess is ensorcelment a word? I know ensorcel is a word, but they basically got ensorcelled into the life by different components. And if you guys listen to my podcast, you know, it is linked down below. It is not 9:30 Central Time. Sometimes I start at 10 p.m. Central Time. So it's 9:30, 10 o'clock range start time. I have a segment called The Daily Traffic, where I go through daily trafficking and sexual exploitation headlines. And a lot of times we read through these stories that, you know, many of these pimps, traffickers, they utilize these components of, you know, in getting these victims addicted to drugs, so that way they have to go back to the pimp or go back to the trafficker in order to get their fix. And thus they're just in a circle of victimhood because they can't get out. They have to give the money to the pimp, to the trafficker. They have to get their drugs and their fix from the trafficker or the pimp. And so it becomes this cycle of abuse. This is just the same components, only utilized by the elite who own these mansions. Continued on. And these are pictures here. 𝘱𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘪 said mansion owners included late financier Bernard Kornfeld left, and that parties were often organized by ICM talent manager Jack Gilardi on the right. So again, you know, high-level people, financiers, we've heard that before. ICM management, it's pretty hard. It's pretty high up there. 𝘱𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘪 tried to speak about the alleged prostitution ring in a bombshell memoir in 2005, but had over 200 pages stripped from the book by her publisher's lawyers who feared legal retaliation from Hefner, who died in 2017. The deleted pages from the manuscript of her book, Playground: A Childhood Lost Inside the Playboy Mansion, detailed chilling incidents, including the 16-year-old 𝘱𝘰𝘮𝘬𝘪 stumbling across a girl at one of the mansion's stark naked and beaten black and blue, who was taken away by security, given Valium, and disappeared. Now, I want to mention that the theme of cover-up is also within episode 3. You know, I said, I play by my word. I'm going to give you guys high level points reviews, but I'm not going to ruin it for you. You know, I definitely want to intrigue you to go watch the episode for yourself. But, you know, it's always good to go watch the episode, come back to this again, you know, if you can't, because these are some things you have to understand that are going on, right? We have to be educated in what happens with the attraction of the elite and, you know, dangling this carrot in front of our faces or the faces of, you know, your younger generations, whether it be your children or your nieces, your nephews, you know, whoever it is. Because this is how it happens, because there are cover-ups, and we see it not just in Playboy, but we see cover-ups happening in different industries or different factions of subsets of industries, if that makes any sense, you know, especially in the entertainment world. So, you know, you guys already get a sense of this book that Jennifer 𝘱𝘍𝘀 wrote, Childhood Lost, and there are some deleted pages, and you're going to learn that it was Playboy that intimidated the legal team of the, you know, whoever was overseeing the content of this book, that intimidated them to, hey, you better take that out or else. And another disturbing chapter, 𝘱𝘍𝘀 wrote about witnessing a young Swedish mini mansion resident and playmate reject called Paulina Svensson overdose in a bathroom after taking drugs from a man in exchange for oral sex. In the deleted book pages, she wrote that the mansion owner had his security guards wrap the bleeding Svensson, the woman, her last name being Svensson, in a blanket and left her in a bedroom without calling the police or an ambulance. Listening at the door, 𝘱𝘍𝘀 claimed she overheard one of the men inside saying, "It's too late, she's dead." When Svensson's father turned up weeks later looking for his missing daughter, 𝘱𝘍𝘀 said she lied and told him she didn't know the girl out of fear of retribution. "The words are pressed against the tip of my lips and so much of me wants to say something, but the fear of someone finding out I've exposed them keeps me silent," she wrote. The man lowers his head and thanks me and walks back over to the blue Dodge rental car. 𝘱𝘍𝘀 wrote that she had a romantic relationship with one of Hefner's girlfriends, identified only as Kendall. Now, this was in the first episode, and this is not, I don't believe this is, because this is like a much older generation of the Playmates. This is one of the Playmates that she, you know, had a relationship with. So it's not the Kendall that you guys might be thinking of if you did watch the recent, or not recent, but you know what I mean, the Girls Next Door episodes. So it continues on. When 𝘱𝘍𝘀 was just 17, Hefner ordered the 2 girls in his room at the Playboy mansion and asked them to have intercourse in front of him, then told them to end their relationship when they refused. "It's now painfully clear that you two can't keep your hands off each other. I'd like to see what that's all about," Hefner is quoted saying in 𝘱𝘍𝘀's deleted chapter. "Few know this about me, but I am a visual man," the late Playboy patriarch told his girlfriend and the 17-year-old 𝘱𝘍𝘀. "I prefer to watch." In another deleted chapter of the book, 𝘱𝘍𝘀 recalls walking in on a naked woman crying being videoed by 2 men in one of the rooms at the mini mansion party. So again, this is departed away from Hefner's setting. This is at a mini mansion, one of Hefner's friends. "The girl is clearly drugged out of her mind," 𝘱𝘍𝘀 wrote. "Please, the girl bleats. I don't want to do this." And one of the men video recording her says, "Come on, honey, don't you want to be a playmate?" The guy with the video camera zooms in while the other one tears the shirt from her hands, exposing her nakedness. She cries out, and you know, the "shut up" B word is shouted. Now, continued on. This is some dark stuff to go through, by the way, and this is all, you know, sort of concise and kind of shortened for us all here, but it's dark. It is dark. It is a dark industry. The video guy chimes in, "You say a word and we send this video all over town. I'm sure your family doesn't want to learn about their daughter being a..." 𝘱𝘬𝘬𝘪𝘀. Josh Belhar, Sagener's editor for the book, that publishing house HarperCollins, said that he was disturbed and shocked when he read her manuscript, but was excited to help reveal the dark underbelly behind the Playboy brand in 2005. But he told DailyMail.com that Hefner's wealth and influence spooked the publisher's lawyers, who gutted many of the chilling allegations from the memoir, despite receiving 15 affidavits from the associates of Sagener backing up elements of her story. Our legal team had a real issue with a lot of things, Jennifer was saying. No one else was coming forward. So, I just want to mention that, just kind of summarizing this last little paragraph. Back then, again, there was not the Me Too movement. So we got to credit them a little. Me Too movement did mobilize a lot of the victims coming forward. But there was not an information age the way we have it today, where we have the internet, anybody can whistleblow, and at any time they can make a post, they can make a video, what have you. But back then, that didn't exist. And so it was more easy for an enterprise to intimidate maybe a whistleblower from telling the truth, because, there wasn't a vessel for people to tell the truth so easily like we do have it today. Sagener said mansion owners included late financier Bernard Kornfeld, and parties were often organized by ICM talent manager agent Jack Gallardi, who before his death repped Hollywood greats including Charlton Heston, Burt Reynolds, Sylvester Stallone, and Jerry Lewis. Kornfeld's mansion, Gray Hall, is a 3-story, we'll just call it a 14,000 square foot pile with 14 bedrooms, 12 baths, and a wood paneled music room with hand painted coffered ceiling. It's currently worth about $34 million. The former Playboy insider said at age 17, she herself was drugged and sexually assaulted by Mark Nathanson, then a politically influential California coastal commissioner who was in Hefner's inner circle that frequented mini mansion parties. How sick is that? We already know that there are some political insiders that are into, this sort of sexual exploitation. But imagine that this just circles back. Not to be Jen Psaki circle back, but it just circles back to my mobilization of everybody needing to get to know who their city councils are, because we need to know whether or not their history includes any sort of exploitation or exploitative scenes like this, because they control your district, your, the agenda items that go on every single, the budgets, so it's characters like this that you have to become aware of. Nathanson, who died in 2009, later confessed to orchestrating $734,000 in bribes for a permit scheme that was close to a former state governor, Gray Davis. Davis was not involved in Nathanson's bribery scheme, and there's no evidence he attended Playboy parties. So it goes into a lot more abuse, but I just wanted to really give you guys this story. I read a good portion of the top that gave you guys some tying insight to episode 3, which is definitely something you want. Again, I can't reiterate it enough. You want to go watch this episode. This is, wow, it's very revealing, and you'll never look at these industries the same again once you know what's going on behind closed doors, because I can assure you that this is all a facade, and every cover-up, every intricate network that is formed to do these types of cover-ups are these are essentially how they have been getting away with it for all these years. But as long as more people are informed and educated on these items, we can definitely deploy out more preventative measures. So with that being said, guys, let me know if you are watching this series. Let me know if you've watched episode 3, what you thought about it. And, again, I just encourage everybody to watch the series. It's a really good production, and the truth that comes out about this dark Playboy enterprise is worth knowing about. So I leave you with that. Thanks, guys, for your support. Thanks for watching this video. I will catch you guys in the next one.